Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to my one day in Gyeongju.
You would see these sort of artificial hills that were made in the complex. You're looking at something that was constructed during a Buddhist dynasty. Everything was just kind of like nature oriented. It came with all kinds of sides. I can't even tell you like what anything was. Okay, a little Gyeongju. Good juju. That's not the same thing. Hello and welcome to another episode of Mantar. Thank you all so very much for coming back. If it's your first time, welcome to the show. And today, my friends, we are doing the third installment of the Korea series, which is the smaller city of Gyeongju. And I was really excited to visit this small city because apparently it had a lot of historical significance. And I will go over everything, including things I was not allowed to film, which will be a recurring theme in the next two videos, in this one and the next one coming up, which is going to be the Korean DMZ. But that's okay, we will go over all of it. I will show you what I can, what I was able to get into, and what you can realistically expect from a trip to this city. But really quick before we get started, if you like this content, go ahead and hit that little subscribe button. It is of no cost to you, but it is tremendously helpful to me. Also, leave a like, leave a comment, hit that little notification bell so you do not miss future Mantar videos. I know you don't want to miss future Mantar videos. I still have two more from Korea coming out, the Korean DMZ and the Korean rail system. You do not want to miss those. Also, if you're new to this channel, please check out my videos from Seoul and Busan. Both of them are out. They were wonderful cities to visit, and the videos take you through my experiences as a first-timer there. I also have 5 videos from Spain, a video from Mystic, Connecticut, a video from the Jersey Shore, a video from Budapest, and another city in Hungary. Lots and lots of travel content on this channel for your viewing pleasure, so don't forget to check those out after you check out Gyeongju, because it was a really interesting city. So, without any further ado, here is my experience in Gyeongju, in the Republic of Korea, in October 2024, on the latest episode of Mantar Global, starting right now. So welcome my friends to the city of Gyeongju. I have just gotten off of the train and found my way to a taxi cab. Now, unlike the other cities I visited in Korea, Seoul and Busan, Gyeongju has only a bus system. It does not have an underground metro system, and I definitely wasn't going to take the bus with my luggage and everything, so I actually relied more on taxi cabs in Gyeongju than I did anywhere else. And right away you could tell you were in a much smaller town than the cities that I had previously visited. But we eventually did get to the quote-unquote city center where all the tourist hotels were, which was close to the tourist sites, and I made my way to my hotel for the next 2 nights. It was a very quick trip, and I was staying at the Den Basta Heritage Hotel, which was lovely but very small. This was all a very small town feel, and by the way, there is not a lot of English proficiency at all in Gyeongju, and that includes at the hotel. So make sure you have a translation app when you visit a hotel in this city, because you are not likely to get someone who speaks English well enough to communicate with you. And so after a quick rest and a freshen up, it was time to head out to dinner.
Okay folks, and welcome to Gyeongju, and it's a much smaller town than anywhere that I was before. Definitely smaller than Seoul, but also much smaller than Busan. So we just arrived. It's the evening, and we're going to see the sights tomorrow. But first, we're going to go have some dinner, and we're going to go check out this Korean fried chicken place, because that's big in Korea, the fried chicken.
And unfortunately, I do not know the name of the fried chicken place because all of the signage, especially in Gyeongju, was in Korean and not translated. But it is the fried chicken place that's like right around the corner from the Den Basta Heritage Hotel. So if you happen to be staying there, you could ask for the good fried chicken place. But again, remember to use a translation app. So So the restaurant was good, and I actually had a waiter who spoke pretty decent English, which was helpful. But of course, it's Korea, so you had to order your food on the tablet, which I did. And in true Korea fashion, I placed an order for one thing, and they bring you like 6 different things. So the first thing they brought out was some popcorn. Okay, I'll take it. Also, look at that nice little Asian kind of cherry blossom decor in the background. Love that. And then they brought out this soupy broth and put some fish cakes in it. Now that was part of the dish that I ordered. It was like fried chicken, french fries, and fish cakes. The fish cakes were very good, as was the fried chicken. I was absolutely done after my meal. It was 100% time for good night and getting ready to explore the one day that I would have to tour around in Gyeongju. Usually I say, and on to day one, but there was only day one. There was only going to be one day of tourism. So, on to the day.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the final day in Korea and my one day in Gyeongju. God, I look tired. It's been a long trip, but really excited for today. We're going to go and try and visit a bunch of temples. This is a very historic city, and there's lots and lots of history here. So we're going to try and see as much as we can, and I'm really excited for it. So first order of business, though, is I'm going to try and find a little breakfast, a little something to eat, because the hotel I'm staying in does not really have an adequate breakfast. So let's do that first, and then we will go see some temples.
And so the first thing I did was I got some coffee, because if there's one thing I can count on in Korea, it's the availability of coffee. And I went to one of the chains that I had seen in Busan and in Seoul called Mega Coffee and had myself a nice decaf. If you watch the Busan video, I outed myself as only a decaf drinker. So that cat's out of the bag. And then a little walk through the town, because I was really in search of Gyeongju bread. In fact, I didn't even know I was in search of it until I started seeing signs for it everywhere. Famous Gyeongju bread. And it looked really good, so I had to make sure I found some. And find some I did at this little place. Couldn't tell you what it was called, but it was so interesting. It was like a mix between a Gyeongju bread vendor and a mail order service. I guess they do mail order of the Gyeongju bread, but there was all kinds of like shipping materials and even like printing press looking things. It was the strangest little shop ever. But that said, after I had to speak with the owner's daughter over the phone because they didn't speak English, I was able to make myself understood that I wanted 10 pieces of the Gyeongju bread, and they sold it to me, and I sat down in the store and I ate it, and oh my goodness, it was so good. Probably not something I would have for breakfast in the future because it was quite sweet, but oh well, I was starving and I wanted to try it, and it did not disappoint. It was very, very tasty. The Gyeongju bread is known for not having any kind of preservatives or anything in it, which is right up my alley. I like natural, no preservatives. I like that stuff. But they did warn me that it has a very short shelf life because of the lack of preservatives. And I told them not to worry, I'm going to eat it all today now. And with breakfast out of the way, it was time to go and explore some of the old tombs that Gyeongju is famous for. Now, as I walked through this complex, it became very apparent that most of the tombs were not accessible to go inside. You would walk around, you would see these sort of artificial hills that were made in the complex, which are burial tombs, but you could not go inside them. However, you could go inside the Daergwan, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, the Daergwan? Someone correct me if I'm wrong, tomb, which costs like 3,000 won to get in. It's like $2, so whatever. But I was like, oh, there's money associated with this. But you were able to go in, and as you can see inside the tomb, there were some old relics and preserved items for your viewing pleasure. Gyeongju was the capital during the Silla dynasty, which preceded the Joseon dynasty. The Joseon dynasty famously made their capital in Seoul, and the Silla dynasty had their capital in Gyeongju, as I mentioned, and was a Buddhist dynasty. So everything in Gyeongju was centered around the Buddhist history of the city. And you'll see something really fun and cool related to that coming up in just a little bit. But besides the Daergwon tomb, everything else, at least in this particular park complex, did not seem to be accessible for indoor exploration to the public. Although another area you could slightly go into was the tomb of King Nichu, but there was only an outdoor area you could go into. But this was supposedly the burial tomb of the 13th king of the Silla dynasty from 262 to 284 AD. And correction, the tomb you were allowed to go inside was the Cheonmachong tomb, which is part of the Daergwon tomb complex. So correction on that. And I make that correction because that particular tomb translates to the Heavenly Horse tomb. And as you can see all throughout the complex, there is imagery of sort of a mystical horse, and it's supposed to signify a mystical horse that guides people into the afterlife when it is their time to go. And after the tombs, I headed right across the street to the complex that houses the Chomsongdae Observatory, which is the oldest surviving astronomical observatory in Asia, and according to Wikipedia, quite possibly the world. And this park complex was absolutely beautiful, well maintained, a gorgeous little oasis of nature. It was just stunningly beautiful. And there's the observatory itself. You cannot go in, but you can go around it. And it's pretty cool to know that you're looking at something that was constructed during a Buddhist dynasty in the 7th century AD, which, if I have my math right, is about 1400 years ago. And then just outside the observatory is an absolutely beautiful garden. I was there in fall. I don't know what it looks like in the winter or in the summer, but oh my goodness, the amount of colorful flowers in every direction. It was just absolutely beautiful, and I just had to spend a significant amount of time there. And when I say this complex was big, I am not understating it. Once I was done with the garden, there was a little walkway right by the water. This looked like it was actually a moat, and I believe it was a moat that was outside of one of the Silla palaces that we're gonna see very shortly. But so far within that complex, I had gone from a 7th century observatory to a beautiful garden to now a walkway alongside this moat. This complex just really took my breath away. And this was all just in a perfect straight line. The tombs to the observatory complex to my next stop, which was Dongung Palace and Woji Pond. This was pretty much an exact straight line, all in walking distance from my hotel, which was great. Now, if you saw my Seoul or my Busan videos, you'll know that I wasn't particularly impressed by this palace. I mean, it looked like a smaller and less grand version of palaces I had seen in both other cities. However, going along with the theme of the day, the nature aspect of this palace was stunning, and Woji Pond is the sort of sight to behold there. But I was really getting a sense thematically at that point in the day that Gyeongju really prides itself on, yes, I know it's somewhat manufactured, but the kind of quote-unquote nature aesthetic, like everything was just kind of like nature-oriented, and plants and trees and grass. And this pond, for example, again, I know it's artificially created, but it's beautiful. And I found myself taking a lazy stroll right around the pond and really taking my time. And so finally, when I was done basking in the nature of everything at that point thus far, I really wanted to make sure that I got to Seoukguram Grotto. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sure I'm not. But this particular destination is a preserved temple from during the Silla dynasty that was built somewhere in the 750 to 770 AD range. And it houses a preserved statue of the Buddha from that time period. So I really, really wanted to make sure I got there. So the first thing I did was I tried to figure out how to do it on public transit. And I found myself at a bus stop waiting for a bus that was either like 6 or 30 minutes away. And I was Googling and it looked like I was gonna have to take 2 different buses. And I was starting to get a little bit of agita about that. So I was like, no, I'm gonna take a cab. And so I found myself a taxi cab, and he spoke 0 English, but I was able to make myself understood enough to let him know that I wanted to go to Seoukguram. And I just want to pause for a moment and recognize this cab driver. He really, really went above and beyond anything I could have imagined. Not only did he drive me to Seoukguram, which is very significantly up the side of a mountain, which I didn't know. Once he drove me all the way up to the mountain and got me to the parking lot, he said, it's sometimes hard to find a cab up here, so I'm gonna go to the temple with you and I'll just let you do your thing. And then when you're done, I'll drive you back. So he parked the car at the top of the mountain and stayed with me the whole time and drove me back to my hotel. Of course, I paid him the fare to go to the temple and the fare to go back to my hotel. So I paid him 2 fares, but he did not have to spend all that time with me, basically taking me around. So I wish I had gotten his name. I didn't, but he was so nice. And on the very, very small chance you're watching this, sir, I can't even express to you how much I appreciated you that day, and that was very, very sweet of you. In general, I found people in Korea to be very, very helpful when I needed help, and I actually want to just express that in general to the very, very helpful citizens of that country who, you know, sort of guided me when I probably had a very lost and bewildered look on my face. So anyway, he drove me to the parking lot, and then there was about a 15-minute walk from the parking lot that was not accessible by car through yet again more beautiful nature. I can't stress enough how beautiful the nature in Gyeongju is. Until finally we arrived at the temple and we made our way up the steps to go and see the Buddha. Now, no photography or filming was allowed in the part with the Buddha. So what I'm gonna try and do is find a non-copyrighted stock image of it so that I can show you what it looks like on the video. So if you're seeing it right now, I don't know if I'll find one as I tape this, but if you happen to be seeing it right now on your screen, that means I was successful in finding one. Let me just tell you, it was behind glass, so it was rather difficult to see, but it is a very, very large and grand and impressive statue of the Buddha. According to the internet, it sits at about 3.5 meters tall, which is quite tall. 3.5 meters is about 11 feet tall for my US viewers. That's give or take. I'm trying to do math quickly in my head, but yeah, it's around 11 feet tall. So it's a rather large statue. Just to think that this was constructed in the 8th century AD. Again, I was saying how the observatory before was constructed in the 7th century AD, which was 1400 years ago. So this was constructed in the 8th century AD, so that's 1300 years ago. This is the appeal of Gyeongju. The appeal is that there are so many very nearly ancient relics that are very well preserved. It's so worth it. I'll tell you at the end if I think one day was enough, but it's super worth it to see all of these sort of ancient artifacts that I guess the city of Gyeongju was able to preserve. And then there was another building which had sort of a regular sort of Buddhist altar, or I don't know if they call it an altar, but it was like a Buddhist something or other that I imagine people would use that facility to pray. And that I was allowed to film, and it looks like this was a sort of an active holy site. And then just like that, it was time to make our way through the nature trail back to the taxi cab, still with my brilliant and wonderful taxi driver with me. He had come with me to the entire site. Another wonderful thing that my taxi driver did for me is that there is a gong that you can ring. You have to pay 1,000 won for it. And he absolutely refused to let me pay for it. He gave the lady the 1,000 won for me to ring this gong. And just like that, it was back in the cab and back to my hotel. And so after just freshening up slightly, it was time to head out to dinner.
Okay, dinner time. And we are going to a place that Dylan recommended. Remember Dylan from the Busan video? If you haven't seen my Busan video, go see it. Dylan was cool. But yeah, anyway, we're going to a restaurant recommendation from Dylan called Hongsi Restaurant.
So it was about a 10-minute walk from my hotel to Hongsi, which again, Dylan had recommended to me for traditional Korean dinner.
A big difference from Seoul and Busan is that there are like no one on the streets. I feel a little bit weird. I'm like the only one on the, also there's like no sidewalks like at all. So like I'm kind of just dodging cars. And yeah, there's a lot of hotels in this area too. And around the hotels I see people walking, but just regularly down the street, not a lot of people and no sidewalks.
So despite the sort of unnerving emptiness of the city streets, I did find my way there and made it in one piece. And it did look like this complex was slightly more upscale, and I was really looking forward to dinner. And right away, I noticed that the dining was on the floor in traditional Korean styles. So the first thing I had to do was take off my shoes at the entrance and accompany the wait staff to my sort of floor height table, where I sat down on like a little blanket or something of that nature and got ready to have dinner. And for once in my life when I was there, the restaurant actually did not have a tablet to order. I actually did order with a live waitstaff person, and I ordered the beef bulgogi meal. And this meal was comprehensive. It came with like 100 appetizers. And then when the beef bulgogi came, it came with all kinds of sides. I can't even tell you like what anything was. I was just trying to eat a little something off of every plate, avoiding the more spicy things if I could. You know, the spicy side dishes are about 50-50 with every meal. But after picking my chopsticks out of the little wooden box, which is pretty standard, all your cutlery and things are in the little wooden box on the table or a drawer underneath the table, but in this case it was in a wooden box, I went to town. The appetizers included a soup, some vegetables, a little scallion pancake type thing, a mashed pumpkin something or other. It was, I really don't know what half the appetizers were. And the meal was beef bulgogi with another soup and a bunch of fishes and some more vegetables and other things I really didn't know what they were. Look at this spread. It is just, I couldn't eat all of it to save my life. And by the way, this entire thing was about, I would say, $10 American. It's insane. And for dessert, they gave you a persimmon. If you've never had a persimmon, it looks just like a tomato on the outside, but it tastes more like, I don't know, it's like a combination between like a peach and a plum or something. It's very sweet. And that was included in the beef bulgogi meal. So like I said, it was about $10 for all of this. It was really, really cool.
Okay, that was delicious. So far, my last dinners in all these foreign countries have been the best, I think, across the board. In Hungary, in Spain, and now in Korea. My last night in the country, I have an incredible dinner, and that was really, really good. So tasty. The appetizer, the entrees with an S, with a plural. because everything was so good. So good way to send us off back to the States in the morning.
And with that, it was back to my hotel, time to pack it up for the evening, get to bed, and head out in the morning because I was on a train to Seoul to get to the airport for my flight that evening.
And that's going to do it from here in Gyeongju.
So I thought Gyeongju was very, very pretty. I was a little bit disappointed, feeling like I could have maybe gone into some of the other tombs if I had. There are so many tombs and you just can't get to all of them in a day if you want to go to places like Seoukguram Grotto, which is far away and you have to arrange transportation and make sure you can get in. So, but I only got inside to the one tomb, and then I got into the King Michu tomb as well, but that's not really an indoor thing. It's just kind of a monument outside. So I sort of wish that I had had more time to go to some of the other temples. And also the Seoukguram Grotto is part of the Bulguksa temple, which I did not get a chance to see. So if I had spent a little more time in Gyeongju, I might have had a chance to go to the Bulguksa temple. So in my opinion, one day there, you're gonna be cramming a lot in. 2 days there, you can probably see absolutely everything in a leisurely fashion. I don't know that I would stay more than 2 days, honestly. Like, I think 2 days you can kind of get to everything. And then other than the tourist attractions, it's a small town. I mean, it's lovely. The people are lovely. They don't really speak English, but they're lovely. They're helpful. I've already raved about the cab driver who was super, super helpful to me. But yeah, I would say that 2 days is probably a sweet spot in Gyeongju if you want to get to everything. Now, I had also been in Korea now for 9 days. So did I miss anything at the Bulguksa temple that I didn't see at the temple by the sea in Busan? Maybe not. I was sort of finding a pattern that, like, once you had seen one Joseon palace in Seoul, you had seen all the Joseon palaces in Seoul. So it may have been that once you see one Buddhist temple, like let's say Temple by the Sea in Busan, you've seen all the Buddhist temples. So I don't know that I would have gotten anything that I hadn't quite seen in Busan at Bulguksa Temple, but I don't know because I wasn't able to go there. So the bottom line is, if you want to go to everything in Gyeongju, I would give yourself 2 days. You could probably do it all in one if you wake up early and you go all day. You could probably get to everything. But if you want to not wake up super early in the morning and just go and like be tired halfway through the day and just you can't rest, then I would maybe recommend doing 2 days. If, like me, you've been in Korea for a while now and you think potentially you might be duplicating things, like for example, the Dongung Palace, it looked a lot like other palaces that I had seen. So like, if you think you don't need to get to everything and you can use kind of your discretion as like what's unique to Gyeongju versus what's like something that you might see in another city, then I think the 1 day was perfect. So I chose to see the things that I knew you couldn't see in other cities, such as Seoukguram and the burial mounds. There just isn't anything like that in Busan, and definitely not in Seoul. So for me, I was very satisfied. You know, you don't go to Gyeongju for the metropolitan hustle and bustle that you're gonna get in the major cities in Korea. You just don't. You go for the history. So if you're not particularly interested in history, then I would skip Gyeongju because it's just about history, and then the main town is a very simple town. Some restaurants, some hotels, you know, not a lot of modern hustle and bustle. Like I said, I was walking down the street going to dinner and there was like nobody on the street, right? So Gyeongju is about history and about seeing some ancient artifacts that, if you're interested in that, is really cool. But I would definitely say 2 days max is like a perfect amount of time. And I was very happy to have seen it. There's really nothing that beats, especially for an American. My country is approaching 250 years old. It's actually gonna be 250 years old in 2 years from now, which is gonna be super awesome. But my country is 250 years old. So when I travel and I hear that something was constructed in the 7th century AD, that was before my country was even a thought in someone's mind ever. So that kind of stuff is really cool for an American, I think, to see history that well predates my country. So again, if you're interested in that kind of thing, I would say it's definitely worth it. Maybe if you're European and you also have history in your country that dates back that far and you're not particularly interested in seeing history in another country that dates back that far, maybe Gyeongju isn't for you. But I will leave that to your discretion, and these are just my thoughts on Gyeongju. But with that, in a chronological order, I was actually on my way home, but I still have 2 more videos coming up because very soon I'm going to release the video from my trip to the DMZ, which talk about history. This is much more recent history, but it is a very, very important piece of Korean history, and it is something that persists through till today. So I will get into all of that in that video. That's going to be the next Korea video coming out very soon. And then after that, I will have the video on the Korean rail system. And then after that, there's going to be a domestic destination in the United States that's going to come out. I'm really excited for that one. So plenty of things still to come on Mantar Global. And like I said, I already have so many things up on this channel. You know, I was asked the other day by a very good friend of mine what my favorite trip of the year was, because as I film this, we are getting close to the new year. And I thought for a moment, because I've been to so many cool places, and I honestly said to him that Hungary was my favorite country that I've been to, bar none, hands down. Hungary was just such a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful country. And that video is available on this channel. It's actually a singular video because basically I toured Budapest, and then for one day I went to another city called Eger in that country. It was my favorite trip of the year, hands down. So if you're interested, please check that out. That video has fewer views on it than some of my other videos on this channel, but really upon reflection, it was my favorite destination this year. So do check that video out if you have not already. You will not regret it. Hungary is a really, really special and magical place. And like I said, stay tuned for more Korea coming up very, very soon. But until then, and until we meet again, everyone out there in YouTube land, have a wonderful afternoon, evening, night, morning, whatever time of day you're watching this. I love you all very, very much, and I will see you at the DMZ in the next one. Bye-bye.